Chaka Khan is a musical icon, known and loved by millions of fans.
I've touched a great many hearts.
Even the greatest voices sing her praises.
I get excited when I hear Chaka's voice because there's nothing in the world like it.
It's a fabulous instrument. If we could bottle it, we'd all be sounding like Chaka Khan.
She will make me cry when I hear her sing. Because there's no voice like a Chaka Khan voice.
But before Chaka hit the big time, she lived her life on the edge, running with the Black Panthers and living in co-ed communes.
Everybody was on welfare but me.
Tell me something good.
By the 70s, Chaka's soaring vocals lifted her to the top of the music world.
Tell me that you love me, yeah.
But eventually, life in the fast lane would catch up with her. Behind the big hair and the skimpy outfits was a little girl suffering from low self-esteem.
I don't think that Chaka ever really saw herself as great as she is.
Chaka turned to drugs to ease the pain.
I did some cocaine. I did some heroin. I tried it all.
And she and her family paid the price.
I never thought it could get any worse, you know. Sometimes it did.
These are the t-shirts.
Finally, after years of untamed fame, Chaka would come clean. It's a story of talent, turmoil, and redemption. This is Lifetime's intimate portrait of Chaka Khan. Intimate Portrait, hosted by Meredith Vieira.
Chaka Khan, it is a name that conjures up images of the wild child of soul and of songs that touched our lives. Remember I'm Every Woman? Imagine all the women who came into their own just by listening to that song over and over again. And what about I Feel For You? Now that one turned me into what her diehard fans would call a true Chakaholic. But as you're about to find out, even as Chaka's music enriched our lives, it almost destroyed her own. This is her story, her words.
And the Grammy goes to I Feel For You, Chaka Khan.
It was 1984. Chaka Khan was at the height of her career, coming off the success of her smash solo hit, I Feel For You. The song, written and composed by Prince, literally transformed Chaka into a superstar.
I had no idea of how successful it was going to be.
I've never heard anything like it ever in my life, and she can open her mouth and do anything that she chooses.
But with all her success, Chaka's drug use was out of control.
There would be people in back of the stage and backstage just saying, here, take this, try this, try that.
And her personal life was suffering. Chaka was rarely there for her children.
I missed out on having her around for a lot of the things that I accomplished in life, you know, like school, or graduations, birthday parties, stuff like that.
Meanwhile, her love life was on the rocks.
We just really weren't ready for each other.
Even her relationship with her record label was falling apart.
The more discipline that was required, the more undisciplined Chaka became.
Chaka was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. After achieving her dream, she was about to lose everything.
I didn't ever leave my apartment. I was terrified. I didn't want to go out there. I didn't feel like all that input and bombardment.
Her life had been a series of ups and downs, but living on the edge was nothing new for Chaka, who was born Yvette Marie Stevens. She was born on March 23, 1953. Yvette was the first of 4 children. Her parents were Charles and Sandra Stevens.
She was a 5-pound even baby. Hardest baby I ever had in my life. I don't know why.
She was just a little shy, but busy, you know, as all little girls are. But she liked to play by herself mostly.
She grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a racially mixed working-class neighborhood.
It was not necessarily a pretty picture. It wasn't a ghetto, you know, like that, but it wasn't easy living either.
Music was at the center of almost everything in the Stevens household. Yvette's mother, Sandra, loved pop and R&B, while her father, Charles, had a thing for jazz.
My dad was either always playing for Stan Getz or Ray Charles, Charlie Parker, Miles. So I grew up with a lot of jazz.
I would sing her to sleep every night, you know, in my bad voice, Nat King Cole songs usually.
Chaka and everybody, we did shows, and you know, everybody sang and played tennis rackets.
Soon enough, the Stevens clan realized their little girl had big talent.
It just brought chills to me. She can really sing. You could just hear it. You know, everybody in the room got quiet, you know, to listen. And then she said, I'm going to be a star. And we said, yeah, right.
No one took her childhood fantasy seriously, least of all Yvette.
I never considered being a singer or being involved in the music industry. You know, I wanted to be an anthropologist or an archaeologist or a botanist or a nun.
Her ambitions reflected her parents' diverse and often conflicting interests. Her mother was a strict Catholic and a researcher at the University of Chicago. Her father moved from job to job and was a self-taught photographer and free spirit.
Yeah, I was kind of a beatnik, playing bongo drums and walking around barefooted.
My dad was the fun guy. He was the one that took us to do fun things. And my mother always told us what time we had to be back.
Yvette was in fact a daddy's girl. Her mother's strict ways often caused friction between them.
When she came home from work, if the dishes weren't washed, you know, all housework done, and dinner on, homework done, there were gonna be problems.
I don't think I was that strict. I think what they considered strict was everything they wanted to have happen didn't happen.
By the time Yvette was 9 years old, what she wanted more than anything was for her parents to get along.
They were arguing and fighting a lot. We saw some pretty bloody stuff when it got really ugly.
In 1962, Yvette's parents split up. Her father moved from Chicago to New York City, leaving Daddy's little girl behind.
The divorce affected me, I think, profoundly, more than I probably am, you know, able to express. I remember my mom would be driving us around and going around, so my sister and I'd be looking for our daddy. I sorely missed him, and I think that's when I started resenting my mother.
2 years later, when Yvette was just 11, she and her sister Yvonne formed their first singing group called the Crystalettes.
We were just like 4 girls going to school who were looking for something to do.
Singing was the one thing Yvette and her mother could agree upon.
She was very supportive. She made our outfits. She was our chaperone. You know, so, you know, she wasn't unreasonable.
They wanted to be with this little singing group, and they wanted to do amateur shows, and that was okay with me.
While singing proved to be a positive force in Yvette's life, society was changing.
Our problem has been, as black people, we've always been concerned about white America, never about us.
It was the mid-1960s, and by now, the Black Power movement was in full swing. Chicago was a hotbed of social and political uproar. Yvette soaked it in.
There was a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard to even describe it unless you lived through it, you know?
Filled with black pride, the soulful 13-year-old joined an African culture band called the Shades of Black. The band members wore traditional African garb and sang African tunes. It was at this time that an African shaman christened Yvette Chaka.
It's derived from the name Chaka Zulu, who's a great warrior.
It was a fitting new name for this blossoming wild child.
I was hanging out with a lot of guys who were radical guys, revolutionaries. I was really, you know, rebelling.
Although she rarely went to class, Chaka attended Calumet High School and was president of the Afro Student Organization. She led protests, set off cherry bombs, and even joined the Black Panthers.
We were staging more and more walkouts, so police would come. We'd fight the police. Things were getting pretty ugly.
She was fighting for the cause. She was really a militant person.
Chaka's radical ways caused more problems at home.
I had a time controlling her. I couldn't control her.
When Chaka was 14, she heard her dad was back in town, so she packed her bags and ran away to find him.
I was back a week and she was over at my house, I think, and I missed her so much.
I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly, but I wanted the freedom to figure it out. I felt I